Hello, I'm Ravin Manimaran from DBT4A. So this is the second lab, home-based lab for industrial lab. So this lab is about the fermentation in our bag. So fermentation is a metabolic process that produces chemical changes in organic substrate through the action of enzymes. Also can be defined as the extraction of energy from carbohydrate in the absence of oxygen. So the microbial fermentation is a process that helps break down large molecules via the action of microorganisms into much more simpler ones. So thus fermentation is broadly used or done by aerobic respiration. So for example, yeast perform fermentation to obtain energy by converting sugar into alcohol. Even some bacteria also perform fermentation, converting carbohydrate into lactic acid. So in this home-based experiment, I'll be using the baker's yeast, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, some water, sugar, or airtight bag, and some measuring tools, measuring beaker, and some Tupperware. Rice flour mixed with cornstarch. So the amount of water I'll be using is actually constant for all the fermentation in the bag. So now I'll be performing the fermentation. I used a Ziploc bag to do 3 different fermentation in a bag and labeled each one. Sugar, pink memo pad; just water, orange memo pad; and mixed flour rice, green memo pad. First, I start the fermentation with sugar about half the scoop. Then I added baker's yeast half the scoop. Then I added 50 ml of warm water. The addition of water, yeast and the fermentable substance, sugar, mixed flour rice, is constant variable. I then close the bag, give it a little mix. Next, I did the fermentation with the mixed flour rice, about half the scoop. I added the baker's yeast, half the scoop. Then I added 50 ml of water. And just like previously, I closed the bag and then give it a little mix. Next up, the fermentation is with just 50 ml of warm water. I added baker's yeast, a half the scoop, and then close the bag, then give it a little mix. So here can be seen I performed the fermentation in a bag and waiting for the result. 10 minutes later, the sugar fermentation has some bubble formation and the bag slightly expanded. The only water fermentation has very mild bubble, indicating the yeast are alive, and the mixed rice flour fermentation has a bit more bubble than only water added fermentation. After waiting for 30 minutes, the mixed rice flour has slightly more bubble than previously. The only water fermentation has no changes, and the sugar added fermentation has lots of bubble formation, with the bag expanded up to 4 cm. In sugar fermentation, yeast enzyme converts sugars and starches into alcohol. Basically, the yeast ferments sugars producing alcohol and carbon dioxide, thus the inflation of bag can be seen. In mixed rice flour or starch, there is not much of changes. Starch is made up of many glucose units joined together, but yeast can't digest starch unless it is broken down into glucose units. Yeast lack amylase and cannot break down starch into sugar. Water serves as a solvent and dispersing agent such as sugar. The water gives the moisture, but without sugar to feed on fermentation is not possible. In order for fermentation to take place, all yeast need food, moisture and controlled warm environment.